All right. Well, good day, everyone, and welcome to our fourth Zowe quarterly webinar. We began this webinar series last October, and we're going strong. We've hosted these webinars once per calendar quarter. This will serve as our Q3 2021 webinar. Before we officially begin, I just want to make everybody aware of a few housekeeping items. Attendee microphones are muted. Panelist microphones are not. So panelists, please be sure to be on mute if you're not speaking. The webinar will be recorded and the replay will be available shortly after we conclude later today. Please feel free to use the chat and or the Q&A options for comments and questions throughout the webinar. We'll have someone helping us to manage that. And I think that covers it. So I'm Rose Katch, Zowe Onboarding Squad Lead. I'll be kicking us off and wrapping it up, and I'll do my very best to keep our timeline on track. As always, we've got quite a bit of content to cover, and this quarter we have a number of speakers here. Here's our plan for today. We'll quickly review the overall content, overall intent, if you will, of these webinars, and then we'll transition into our focus topic. This quarter, we are featuring the Zowe Explorer Team Configuration, and Jelly will be leading that section. Next, our Focus Squad News section, we are featuring the ZLC, Zowe Leadership Committee, where Mike and Bruce will share important ZLC deliverables and ongoing plans. And then we have a couple of guest speakers from our extender community. We have Jimmy from Micro Focus, and hopefully we're working on getting Ulf from Sega Software with us to introduce their new Zowe V1 conformant extensions. And we'll wrap it up as we usually do by sharing some new to you highlights, upcoming events, and general information on how to be in touch with the Zowe community and how to stay tuned in. We typically do not have time for Q&A, so I encourage you to please type in your questions if you have any along the way, and we will work in real time to address them as we go. Okay, quickly, our intent for the webinar series is to offer a forum for open exchange of information and ideas. The goal is to give both members of the community and those beyond the community insights, mostly in the form of highlights into what's happening with the Zowe project, and also offer suggestions on how to stay connected. As I mentioned, our plan is to host these webinars on a regular basis, and it's been successful so far. This is going to complete our first full year in this series, and unless your feedback tells us otherwise, we plan to continue with the same cadence and format. Now I am excited to hand off to Jelly, who will be sharing and going into detail on our focus topic, Zowe Explorer Team Configuration. Over to you, Jelly.
Thank you, Rose. Well, hi, everyone. And my name is Justin Punubay. I'm the Zowe Squad lead. You can call me Jelly. So if you go to the next slide, please. So today we're going to talk about the Zowe Explorer Team Configuration file. But before I go into deeper into that topic, let's go back and let's identify what is a team configuration, and maybe even further, why how are we connecting to mainframe through Zowe Explorer and through CLI? So our current implementation for Zowe Explorer is that when we are connecting to mainframe, we need profiles, or we need this connection information. And right now we're using profiles in Zowe Explorer, and these profiles are basically YAML files that contains your host, your port, or your web service, and as well as your credentials. So today we have one LPAR, or one web service per YAML file, and a Zowe CLI has its own profile. The plugins has its own profile, and a user can have multiple profiles. That means multiple YAML files. And now we're implementing this team configuration file. And the team configuration file is a JSON configuration file that contains connection information of multiple LPARs, or multiple web services. So Zoe CLI can reference a one global configuration or a project level configuration, and one user can have one global configuration and a multiple project level configuration. So let me go to the next slide to give you, let's say, a comparison. So what I said earlier is that the current implementation that we have on the top part here, we have the folders, the base profile, I have the Endeavor location profile, the ZSMF profile, and inside that ZSMF profile, we have three YAML files for different LPARs, and even each YAML file has this host port, reject unauthorized protocol information. So it's a repetitive information inside each YAML file. And if you go to the next slide, and now the team configuration implementation can just contain one file, which is inside the .zoe folder for the global team configuration, and it will contain this properties inside this config. So let's say in here I have the system Z cobol. I have a property that's a base property, which is the host, and under that it can connect to different profiles such as the SMF or maybe a TSO profile, an SSH profile, an FTP profile, whatever you want, and it could contain in just one file. So maybe it's better to do a demo rather than just show you pictures. And today, if you go to the next slide, Rose, we're gonna have this demo flow, and the flow is that a system admin will create the team configuration file using the Zowe CLI. And this means that I will create this config file, and this contains all the connection details of a company's mainframe system, and then the sysadmin will push the changes to GitHub and inform the team members of this new configuration. And now the team members, let's say for example, the application developer will receive this email or this information. He or she will clone this repository, and then she will open it in Zowe Explorer to work on that or to work on her project, and decides to use the team configuration that the sysadmin created. So today I will play as a sysadmin. I will use the VCLI to create the team configuration that my application developer would need, and the application will be played by Rochelle. So I will share my screen. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, great. So my goal as a sysadmin today, I will need to create a configuration file for, let's say, this project A and B, and I've created the project B that's needed by my application developer, and I wanted to create a project A configuration file. And so I cloned this, or let's say I created this repository, and then I have it here in my Visual Studio Code. So right now I have, if I go to my Zoe version, you would be able to see that I have a next version of Zowe CLI, which is now available for download. And this is what the team configuration has, or this is the version that you can use the team configuration. And then I could do the Zowe config in it to initialize the JSON config file. But I want to use help because I wanted to know what are my options. So here I have this global configuration and a user configuration file. So just to explain what is the difference between a global configuration and the user configuration. If I use the global configuration, it means that it will create config file inside my .zoe folder. So here's my .zoe folder, and it will use this Zowe config JSON, and I could use it in as a global configuration for all of my plugins. And then there's this user config, and this user config is specific for the user. So let's say I am using, I don't know, as a small system that is specific for myself, and I don't want it to share to anybody, and I want it for myself, then I could create this user configuration. But today I will create a specific project based config. So what I could do is just type Zowe config in it, and it will create this configuration. Or I will provide, let's say, my username, my username first, and then let's say the password here. And then it will create this configuration template specific for this project. And now if I open this one, it will have all of these properties as the host, as in my helper one. I could change this to the specific, let's say project A system, and then I will have all of these properties for ZOSMF, TSO, SSH, whatever you want. And then since I added that username and password, it already secured this to me. But if a app developer uses this, they could fire a Zowe config secure to change the username and password here. So let's say, for example, this is already okay. I already have my defaults here as well. Um, I change this to project A. So if I change this to project A, I should change this to project A as well. All right. So let's say this is already okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this to let's say my main. Let's say config. And then once I push this, I will inform my my colleagues that hey, I have the configuration ready for the project A. You can use it now, if you want, and then you can clone it whenever you want. So I will pass the demo now to Rochelle, and she will show you the application developer perspective. Rochelle, are you ready?
Yes. Let me share my screen. Are you able to see it now?
Yes, we can.
All right. So I'm now in the Zoe downloads folder. So I'm able to access just the from zoe.org and downloads. Here we can download specific builds of Zoe, and there's a section here called Zoe Technical Preview. Under this technical preview, we have a section for Zowe Explorer, and it's just explained here that our pre-release version of this team configuration is available in our GitHub releases page, and you can directly download it from using this link. We have some small documentation on the early access features, and it will link you to this page in our GitHub releases. So as you can see, it is tagged as pre-release. It's not our production ready version, and we have a version 2.0 dash next and the build date. In this page, you can directly download the v6 files, both for the Zowe Explorer core and our FTP extender extension. So that's how you will be able to test and validate our at next version of Zowe Explorer. So if I go to my VSCode extension, on the left hand corner, there's an extensions tab here. And if I want to install the version that I downloaded, I simply click install from v6 and it will pop up where I downloaded. I can install it. I've already done that. So as you can see, I have my Zowe Explorer. The version is vnext. I've also installed the FTP extension vnext, and that means that my Zowe Explorer has been modified for FTP support. So I'm in my VS Code Explorer, I'm in my top level Zowe folder. So as Jelly mentioned previously, this Zowe folder contains your old school profiles where each of your services will have their own folder and each service will have their own YAML files. In this same top level Zowe folder, now I have my Zowe config JSON that I if I click it, it will just contain some global properties, which contains my host, and the default is set to global.zsmf. So that means that when I go to my Zowe Explorer, I'm expecting that it's the default profile that will be displayed. So since I've already secured my user and password using Zowe config secure, I'm able to use this profile, um, and all the existing Zowe Explorer functions would still apply. And since I have the FTP, I'm just able to add it and I can use this profile with the same user and password. And what's happening in the background is that the API is merging all the properties from the global, whatever profile type. For example, for ZSMF, it's getting the port from here. And from my base profile, it's getting the reject unauthorized property as well as the secured user and password. So that's my global config. But I just received an email from my sysadmin that we have a new project and the configuration file for that project has been set up. So what I need to do is just to clone that folder, open it in my VSCode extension. So if I open the folder, I would be able to get the config.json. And I can see that it's already set up for me. I don't need to know the details of the host and port. I have specific defaults as well. And all I need to do is just do Zowe config secure, and it will prompt me for my user and password for this particular project. So I've already done that. And so if I go to my Zowe Explorer, it will load the default project A. So since I have a project folder project level config, it overwrote what I have in my global config. So I can also add my FTP profile here and so on and so forth. So the context now of this Zowe Explorer window is a project A. So what if I also want to work on project B? For example, it's in a different system. So what I can do, I can open a new window. And in this window, I can open project B. So since project B also has its own config.json, and that's also where the project B defaults are, that's what I will have in my Zowe Explorer. So as you can see, I'm able to work in this context with project B connection details, and here in this window, I can work with project A. So it's time to say that this project level configuration only works for single root workspaces. So what it means is that it just detects the root of the folder that is open in your workspace. So this one is just a single folder workspace. And even if I add more folders to this, it will just get the context from the root. So to show that further, for example, I open another project. And in this case, I have a list of subdirectories that contain, each of them contains their own config.json. But in the top level one, I don't have any config files. So the expectation is that in Zowe Explorer, it will fall back to the global configuration file. In order to be able to use one of them, I will have to open them in the context of the workspace itself. So let's say I open this combined one. And this combined one contains several different LPARs or services, and they all share just the base one. So in this case, I will have to check what the default ZSMF profile is, and that's the one that will be loaded on my Zowe Explorer. But if I want to work with different LPARs, I can simply choose the plus button, and then I will be able to choose which LPAR I want to work on, either ZSMF or ZFTP. So that's the single root workspace that we have right now. So if I go back to working with Project A, and I have here my FTP, but I realized that I do not want to work with it. So I want to delete it or update it, for example. So what's going to happen is if I'm working on it and I right click, delete, same with our previous versions, it will open up the specific project config.json that I created. And that means that I will have to edit the JSON file myself. So for example, I want to delete the FTP. Normally, I wouldn't need to use it because the system admin has created it for me. But for example, I want it just for my own or for my team. I can simply delete it and save it. But I would to refresh the Zowe Explorer, I will have to reload my window. And even if I have my FTP um, extension installed, I will not be able to add it. So if I wanted to add a new one, I will be able to use the VSCode's IntelliSense, and using the schema, I will be able to add the new profile. For example, I want to add back the FTP, and it will be able to help me with the different um, properties that I need for for an FTP connection. So for example, I want everything to be the same. I can specify all of these properties, but I just want the port. And as you can see, it even gave me the default from the schema file. So I don't want it to have its own secure fields. So I will just save it, and then I need to reload the window so that it will be able to get the new changes from the config file, and then I will be able to see my FTP profile again. So that's it. That's it for my demo, and that's how I'm able to work with project level and global configuration in Zowe Explorer. I think the last thing that I want to mention is that this is you can use the same folders and the same structure. Is you can use that in Zowe CLI, um, and they're interchangeable. So if you create a new project or a new profile in your just in CLI, you will be able to use it in Zowe Explorer. That's it. Back to you, Jelly.
All right, thank you, Rochelle. Rose, if you could share the slide, please. And next slide, please. So thank you, Rochelle, for that wonderful demo. So just to cap this off, I wanted to specify the benefits of using this team configuration. So similar to the Zowe CLI benefits, I wanted to specify that if you use this team configuration, you do have a simplified configuration in your hands. You're just using one file. And as Rochelle showed, you can use it as a project level configuration or a global configuration, whichever you choose. And you don't have to maintain multiple profiles as what we have currently doing right now. You can access your services directly, or you can leverage the Zowe API mediation layer um, in your configuration for this um, team configuration. You know, and then you have a separate user um, config file if you wanted to customize for yourself. There's a global config file and a project level based configuration. So I I would just want to mention that using this config file makes it easier for us to maintain our connection details as well as in Zoe CLI as well as in Zowe Explorer. And what for the next slide, please. Sorry. And what will be the next steps? So as Rochelle have shown you, you can download this version of Zowe Explorer in the technical preview page. Right now, we have access to the global configuration, and we will soon release this project level configuration feature in the page or in the GitHub releases. And then I would like to mention that currently in Zowe Explorer, we're working on the V1 conformance criteria, but this team config will be a consideration for our V2 conformance criteria once V2 is Zoe V2 is implemented. The link is right here for download. If you're interested, please do give us some feedback. And that's all for our demo, Rose. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. Thanks, Jelly. Thanks, Rochelle. Questions for Jelly or Rochelle? Remember to post them to Q&A or to the chat, and we will have them respond as we drive forward. All right, so the Zowe Leadership Committee, we call them ZLC, has been very busy this PI. and Bruce and Mike will fill us in. Over to you, Bruce.
Thanks, Rose. This particular item, I guess, is news to the community on an upcoming change to the Zowe Leadership Committee. And let me give, I'll say a little bit of history. When the Zowe project first formed in 2018, we formed the Zowe Leadership Committee. It was really a group of us, I'll say 3 technical and I'll say 3 more business-oriented individuals, and we were taking actions on, you know, what projects do we want to pursue, and you know, I'll say a voting body, a governance body for the early days of the project. What is changing is those of you that are been involved in the community, at the beginning of this year, we had the formation of what we call the Technical Steering Committee, which is just that. It is technical leaders within the community that have formed, I'll say, their own voting body on where we want to take the project. And that varies anywhere from coding standards to documentation to automation testing, you know, a whole variety of issues that they've done a great job of getting their arms around. So what has now happened is we're rethinking the role of the Zowe Leadership Committee, and the proposal that we have here, and there's a GitHub item where people can read and comment, is we are looking to evolve the Zowe Leadership Committee into an advisory council. And I'm going to say still with a business mindset or as consumers of the technology. So we will be working with the Technical Steering Committee, you know, giving our opinions on, you know, directions to go and such. And what you will, I'll say, hear more from us about is recruiting more participants in this process as we form opinions on where do we want Zowe to go in the future. So we talk about it being more a product manager perspective on what's going on in the community, but I don't want to limit it to product managers, right? Whether you're a customer, a consumer of the technology, a university, whatever, we want this council to help shape the direction that we implement technically. So what you see here is a list of example issues that we want to tackle. There's some things, you know, where do we want to be in 5 years? You know, what Jelly mentioned a new version coming up. We'll talk more about that in the future as well. So we're going to have the TSC take the technical leadership, and the ZAC, as we're now going to call ourselves, we'll look at I'll say more the business side. Granted, we're not a business, but more the product management side of what we're trying to do here. Everyone is welcome to participate in the ZAC. That's why I say we'll do some recruiting to get more diverse opinions on where we want to take this. The ZLC has a standing meeting already, Tuesdays 9 a.m. Eastern. So we'll probably keep that time slot, but as I say, encourage others to participate. And you can subscribe to that calendar invite. I do my best to get an agenda published ahead of time. Some weeks that happens, sometimes not. But anyone would be willing to add to the agenda and bring issues forward. The description of what the ZAC is going to be about is in the GitHub issue that's here in the slide. You can see the past debate that we did on, you know, what do we want this council to be, and you're welcome to add comments there. So it's just kind of news that you can use. And I encourage everybody to get involved in this, that are stakeholders in the future of Zowe. So I'll keep an eye out in Q&A session if anybody's got questions for me there. And now I'll turn it over to Mike to talk about one of the things that the ZLC has done as we exit from ZLC to Zach. So Mike, over to you.
Thank you, Bruce. So today, I'd like to share some great news about a new proposal, which is on the verge of becoming a reality, and I'm pretty excited about it, but we wanted to socialize it with the whole community for both awareness and to request your feedback as well. I'm talking about a new conformance program for Zowe support offerings. The Zowe Conformance Program has become a huge part of ensuring that the overall experience of the consumer of any Zowe extension meets their expectations for things like functionality, interoperability, and of course, usability. What that means is that when you, as a Zowe consumer, make the decision to use a conformant Zowe extension for any reason, you can be sure that the experience that you get when using that extension is consistent with the overall Zowe experience. In other words, feels like it belongs there, fits in, it follows the rules, it works the way other things that are Zowe related work, and it doesn't exhibit any unusual characteristics that leave you questioning your decision to use it. And now Zowe is on the verge of delivering a new conformance program for support offerings. So that's a little different than the conformant technology programs that exist today for APIs and desktop apps and CLI plugins. But it's really still about functionality and interoperability and usability. But what you're choosing is to use a support vendor who offers you some level of support for Zowe. Obviously, Zowe is an open source solution, not a typical vendor solution for mainframe. And while Zowe solves a good number of business problems, out of the box, Zowe support is provided by the Zowe community. And if you're planning to make Zowe a critical component of your everyday business, you've probably thought about how to upgrade to commercial enterprise grade support for Zowe, or at least for the components of Zowe that you're using. And of course, you'll be able to find that support, and no doubt you'll have more than one choice and you'll need to do some homework. But what the Zowe Conformance Program does is it creates a bar so that you know right away which support vendors are clearing that bar. So let's talk about the bar for a moment. For starters, a conformant support vendor will support any authentic distribution of Zowe. So if you got Zowe from Zowe.org, or if you got Zowe from any other trusted vendor, you can purchase support from any conformant vendor, and you won't need to download Zowe again from that vendor or to reinstall their version of Zowe in order to be supported. Conformant support vendors work with the Zowe community. They agree to report security vulnerabilities to the security team, and they follow all of the rules established by the Technical Steering Committee for contributors to Zowe, including the rules for creating and naming fixes. And they abide by the spirit of EPL 2.0 licensing. And a conformant vendor certifies that they have the hardware, the software, and the personnel that is needed to diagnose and resolve the problems in the Zowe components that they support. You can use the link on this slide to get more information about Zowe conformance. Now, who's eligible? Essentially, any vendor is eligible as long as they meet the criteria for conformance in the application. As part of the application, a vendor will also disclose the set of Zowe components for which they're seeking a conformance badge, which may or may not be the same as the set of Zowe components that they actually offer support for. And they may seek conformance for comprehensive Zowe support for all components, or they may select a specific component like, say, Zowe CLI or Zowe App Framework. The vendor applying for conformance will also disclose the email addresses of the individuals who support the various Zowe components for them. And one of those employees must have active contributor status in the appropriate Zowe squad for each component. Conformant support vendors will be able to display a badge on the OMP site just like any other Zowe conformant extenders for technology. And you can get easily to that list of badges for the conformant support vendors from Zowe.org right from the landing page. So as a consumer, you can basically start right there when searching for support for Zowe. And you can be sure that any vendor who's displaying a Zowe conformance badge for support has cleared the bar for all the requirements that I've mentioned today and then some. And we're hoping that the program goes live in the very near future, so keep an eye out. But like I said, we wanted to socialize it so that we could not only make you aware of it, but request feedback about it as well. And Rose, I think that's all we have from the ZLC, and I'm giving the mic back to you, right?
You are. Thanks, Mike and Bruce. Questions for Mike or Bruce related to ZLC or ZAC? Please go ahead and post those to Q&A or chat. And let's see, next up, we have several new Zowe Z1 conformant extensions proudly displaying their Zowe conformance badge. And I believe I'm turning it over to Jimmy from Micro Focus to give us some details. Over to you, Jimmy.
Thanks, Rose. Slide. Great. Okay. So a couple of years ago, we introduced REST services to help our customers achieve their DevOps transformation. Our customers have been deploying and managing their mission-critical apps with change management for years. If you were to talk to any of our customers, they tell you that their mainframe infrastructure is an investment and they view change management as the backbone for the delivery pipeline. But in all honesty, I'm sure if we polled every Endeavor customer or all the ISPW customers, they're gonna say the same thing, as they should, right? Fortunately, we have a lot of loyalty amongst our respective customers, and we certainly thank them for that. The common thread, however, is that our respective customers have diverse teams. There's traditional mainframe developers, but there's also a new wave of modern developers who are preferring, open source tools or tools they're more familiar with. And there's this growing perception that in order to enable DevOps, mainframe shops need to switch tools, but that's not accurate, nor is that a successful practice either. Companies want to continue to invest and deliver to their customers, but ultimately they don't want to do something that is going to cause them to hit the pause button on something that is mission critical. With integrations, companies now have the ability to bridge the gap between their mainframe and modern development without having to throw out the baby with the bathwater. They also have the ability to automate their tools and processes and provide stakeholders with better insight into their delivery. Now, what I'm saying isn't really something that's going to be all that earth-shattering. But for Micro Focus specifically, it has been a bit of a misstep for us because we haven't done enough to reach out to those customers when it comes to integrating our story and helping them with modern development. And that really led us to this next step, which is really joining the Open Mainframe project. So if you can skip to the next slide, Rose, please. So shortly after joining, we set out to build our first plugin to primarily help address the automation of tools and process. We developed the Change Management plugin for the Zowe CLI. With the command line interface, our users have the ability to script processes and integrate with virtually any tool within the DevOps tool chain, from building, testing, and delivery, as well as managing static security processes. We also created the VSCode Explorer plugin too for ChangeMan, and it's based on the Zowe CLI. Both plugins have been available since the end of June and are available on our marketplace. Also for the ChangeMan plugin for the Zowe CLI, that can be found on the Zowe site too. Over the coming months, we plan to create more plugins that we can post on the Zowe platform. The next one we're tackling right now is for Git, and hoping that we have something that we can be able to start sharing with our customers probably later this year. That's it from my side, Rose.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks for joining us today, and thanks for joining the Zowe community. Welcome, everyone from Micro Focus. Excited to have you all on board.
Yeah, it's been great so far. Thank you.
All right. So, May, were we able to get a hold of our next speaker? I don't think I see. Oh,
no, he's actually unable to get on.
Okay. Okay, so we'll save the details around our next extender for next time, hopefully. And in the meantime, the Sega software badges are proudly displayed over at the Conformance site at zowe.org. please go ahead and check that out, and we'll hope to secure all for next time. All right, and as always, questions for Jimmy or anything else that was presented up until this point, please continue to post in the chat and Q&A. And I will go ahead then and start to wrap us up with new to you and upcoming events. So before I get started, just a quick disclaimer. This by no means is a comprehensive list of what's been introduced over the past 3 months. We just wanted to make sure that you were aware of a few of the key highlights. So first of all, the Zowe release blogs. Special thanks to Joe Winchester. Joe is our Zowe Everywhere community member. And effective with release 1.20, Joe has been working with the OMP to publish a blog to complement each new Zowe release. The blog is designed to offer technical highlights and includes a link to the associated solution demo. So if you're interested in actually hearing the team demo all of the new features associated with a release, please check out this blog. Write down this bookmark that I have listed here, openmainframeproject.org/news/blog, and that should take you right to the current blog. Okay, next, the Zowe doc site. This has been restructured based on a great number of community feedback. As you may recall, last quarter we spoke about the launch of the new Zowe.org website. Similarly, this redesign presents a dramatically different experience. Some of the highlights include a revamped site layout and homepage, a light dark theme, estimated reading time, quick sharing to social platforms, and the ability to zoom in and zoom out images. Big shout out here and thanks to Ashley, the Zowe Doc Squad lead, and all of the Doc Squad members for their amazing work. Definitely want to check out Zowe Docs. Okay, more new to you. Speaking of community feedback, one of our primary means of gathering feedback is our semi-annual Zowe survey. We plan to launch our next survey in August, and we cannot stress enough how important it is to have you all participate. The survey itself will help you as a participant understand where each of the Zowe squads are headed. We break down the survey by Zowe component, and the survey questions themselves tend to reveal the roadmap in a sense. But what's most important is your response. It serves as one of the primary reference points for the Zowe roadmap. So please consider participating and sharing with other folks within your company. The more, the merrier, the more helpful it will be to all of us. And do want to thank those of you for taking part in our January survey. And once this survey is complete, like I said, we're going to launch it in August. We'll probably run it for several weeks. We will post the results of it when they become available. Okay, next up, this is sort of a notice, particularly for all Zowe extenders. Those of you with Conformance CLI plugins, app framework extensions, or APIs, and soon the Zowe Explorer extensions, be on the lookout for new V2 LTS conformance criteria for each of these components. I think Bruce and Jelly mentioned a little bit about V2. There's much more information that we plan to share with you. We'll probably highlight V2 actually in the next quarterly update. But we want to make sure that the extenders have their awareness flags up because there will be new conformance criteria more than likely for all of the components. Okay, also we have several features available as a technical preview, including Zowe Docker Build and Zowe Explorer. Rochelle sort of took you through that page when she did her demo. And then finally, the CLI Squad also has introduced several new features that are available for validation only. They are on the docket for V2, but you can try them out ahead of time. And I think they'll soon be available as part of the technical preview page as well. So if you're interested in that, we have a link to the early access CLI features there. Okay, this is a repeat from last quarter, but worth another mention. If you haven't been to Zowe.org lately, please go ahead and check it out. This was a collaborative effort between Zowe Onboarding and the Zowe Doc Squads. We introduced the Zowe.org website redesign back in April. Content-rich pages, plenty of logical navigation options. We've designed this based upon the intent of the person doing the navigating. In other words, do you want to learn Zowe? Do you want to use Zowe? Do you want to extend Zowe, contribute, etc.? And there's more to it than that. Our point here is that this is intended to be your one-stop shop for all things Zowe. And I'll talk a little bit more about one of the features that will help you to become involved in a minute. So we are headed into our quarterly PI planning meetings, program increment PI planning. If you're interested in learning what was delivered over the past quarter, if you're interested in learning what's planned for this upcoming quarter, please consider attending these two sessions scheduled for next Wednesday. The planning itself lasts 3 days in total, but the opening sessions provide you with a good idea of where the squads are headed. If you want to know what was agreed upon and what the actual plan is, then do plan to attend the Friday sessions. We have links to those meetings, and I can share with you where you can go ahead and find those meeting times with the links. But here we're just outlining the plan itself, starting in July, ending in October. And I've highlighted the dates for the PI planning down in the right corner there next week. If you'd like to attend the release demos live, we have plans to demo in August, September, and November. System demos are not set in stone, as release schedules can change. But again, refer to the Zowe calendar for confirmation. And the easiest way to do that, thanks to our Zowe.org redesign, is to go to Zowe.org, click on the community page down until you see the calendar. And we've got the PI planning meeting scheduled in there with the Zoom meeting links. So please go in and save those to your own calendar if you plan to attend. On this slide, I've highlighted the V12 version 1.23 system demo that's planned for August 4th, but you can interactively adjust the calendar and it will take you right to the appropriate meetings for that day. All right. For upcoming educational sessions, look for Zowe, ZLC, TSC, onboarding, and many more squad member and OMP ambassador Joe Winchester. And we have our Director of Program Management at the Linux Foundation, John Murtek. They'll both be at Code Palooza. That's running August 18th through the 20th. And they're going to be hosting, leading two very cool mainframe sessions highlighting Zowe. And just prior to that online event, be sure to register for the August Share Virtual Experience. This is happening August 9th through 13th, with a number of Zowe sessions ranging from how Zowe has been deployed at customer sites, the CLI features planned for Zowe V2, the critical role of the API mediation layer, and building VSCode extensions using Zowe Explorer APIs and more. The Zowe sessions themselves, from what I understand, are running August 9th and 10th. But wait, there's more. Before we meet again in October, be sure to check out 2 more virtual events featuring Zowe sessions. They are the Open Mainframe Summit scheduled for September 22nd and 23rd. And then later that month, the Open Source Summit Europe scheduled for the 27th through the 30th. And I would imagine those sessions would be of a more convenient time for our European folks. As always, we continue to recommend you bookmark medium.com/Zowe and medium.com/modern mainframe, because the Zowe community blogs, and they blog quite often. This is where you'll find a tremendous amount of information. Some are very technical, some are informational and more use case oriented. An example of what we've just put out here is Ashley's blog on the Zowe doc site improvements. So if you're interested in learning what was done there and how to take advantage of that, go ahead and take a look at that 6-minute read. Many of them are very short and sweet and very informative. And finally, you're always welcome to join any and all of our meetings. Bruce had mentioned that we're looking for folks to join the ZAC, the Advisory Council. We're looking for any folks that are interested in joining any part of the community, or if you're interested in just learning what's going on for a particular component. Each of the squads host their meetings every week, and the schedule is available at zowe.org. I kind of walked you through that just a few minutes ago. That's really the fastest way to get at the information you need. And if you want to reach out to someone directly, most all of the community is out on the Slack channels at openmainframeproject.slack.com. Again, you don't necessarily have to remember these links, just remember one, zowe.org. And with that, we thank you all for attending today. I don't know if there's any outstanding questions. I'd like to think that we were able to manage those.
I have one and I'm typing my answer.
Okay. We are going to return in October. We're tentatively scheduled for October 20th, same time. Our focus topic is going to be Zowe V2. So if you're interested in understanding where we're going and when we're going there, please do plan on attending our next quarterly update. We will post more details related to the quarterly update at the zowe.org landing page in the announcements section as shown here at the bottom of the screen. With that, yes.
Rose, it might be just to if in case people are concerned, we might just say up front that version 1, the existing Zowe stream, is planned to be supported, for I think somewhere between 2 and 2.5 years. It'll go into a maintenance only mode. So for those of you that are hearing about Zowe version 2 for the first time, rest assured we're not abandoning the existing code base, and it'll be supported for a couple years in the future. What we're talking about is shifting to a new code stream with new capabilities going forward. So just, I thought I'd put that plug in, Rose, in case people were concerned.
Thank you. Very good point. All right. Jelly, are we good with questions?
Yes. I don't know if there are more questions, but I'm able to answer the ones that I saw.
Okay. Just have a minute. Let me just double check the chat. All right. I think we are all set. We will see you all next time. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope you found it informative, and have a great quarter.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Rose.